Trump shakes Emperor's hand and everyone immediately noticed one huge thing that happened. Look close. There has been no end to the comparisons between President Trump and former President Obama. For the most part, Democrats tend to love and support their DNC-anointed President, Obama, and Republicans back their choice in President Trump. The news media has been a huge part of the perception of both of these men and in many ways shaped how the public sees their careers. Even though the media fawns all over the Obamas and in turn makes President Trump's every move sound like it's going to end the world as we know it, a picture is still worth 1,000 words. And between pictures and the constant updates from the president's own social media, we can usually sort out what is the truth, and what is media bias. This is especially important when it comes to the weightier issues, like the president's ability to deal with foreign diplomacy. The former commander-in-chief, Barry Obama, seemed all too happy to yield an unending respect and deference to any and all leaders of other countries, whether they be friend or foe. President Trump, however, doesn't feel the same way. He ascribes to the notion that as the leader of the United States, he can be respectful, but still not acquiesce to the leaders of other countries. The Daily Mail reports about the huge difference between when President Trump and former President Obama met the Emperor of Japan. President Donald Trump met with Japanese Emperor Akihito and Empress Michiko on Monday, sharing a brief handshake 8 years after his predecessor became a global laughingstock by bowing deeply before the monarch. Visiting with the Emperor and Empress is routine for heads of state visiting Tokyo, and Trump did his part a few hours before a joint press conference with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who wields more power than the aging figurehead. Trump nodded his head slightly but did not bend at the waist. An administration official traveling with Trump on his Far East tour told DailyMail.com that bowing is not his style, never has been. It might not be President Trump's style, but it is some people's. Obama was essentially a laughingstock when he met the same emperor back in 2009, shortly after he was sworn into office. Obama went way over the top by bowing low before the emperor of another country, making Americans the world over feel shame that he was the one to represent us. In 2009, when the 6'2" Barack Obama visited Tokyo's Imperial Palace, he made a grand gesture by bowing at the waist to the 5'5" Akihito. It wasn't the first time Obama was caught up in a bowing scandal. 7 months earlier, he appeared to bow to the King of Saudi Arabia during a G20 summit in London. Akihito assumed his title in 1989 following the death of his father Hirohito, who had presided over Japan's military alliance with Nazi Germany. Hirohito green-lighted the bombing of the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, killing more than 2,000 and leading to America's entry into World War II. Deep bow. Trump's predecessor Barack Obama earned plaudits in Tokyo but caught no end of grief in the U.S. for bowing deeply before the emperor in November 2009 at the same spot. And while one might assume that the former president was just misinformed as to the proper etiquette of the country that he was visiting, his actions weren't an isolated incident. Obama seemed to make a habit of bowing before the leaders of any country, including Saudi Arabia. This is an especially insulting trend when it comes to bowing before those whose countries we consider to be far from our allies. Former President Obama seemed to be completely out of touch with the level of dignity that the American people required from our president. Thankfully, we don't have that problem in this president or his wife. American First Lady Melania Trump also towered over Emperor Akihito and Empress Michiko as they met on President Trump's second day in Japan. Trump visited Pearl Harbor before flying to Japan, paying his respects at the memorial to the USS Arizona, where more than 1,100 U.S. sailors and Marines were killed in the 1941 Japanese sneak attack. Akihito has said he will abdicate the chrysanthemum throne in 2018 when he turns 85. Crown Prince Naruhito, 57, will become emperor at that point. Japan claims its monarchy can be traced back 2,000 years, all the way to the legendary sun goddess Amaterasu. President Trump is in Japan to deal with a number of issues that we face, along with our ally, and that entails working with both the Prime Minister and the Emperor. Much like many countries, Japan has an elected head and a figurehead. Abe and Akihito are at opposite ends of the political spectrum, with the Prime Minister being far more conservative and willing to antagonize its North Korean neighbor with economic sanctions as Kim Jong-un rattles his nuclear sabers. Japan's constitution has forbidden it to have a standing army since 1949, but in reality, its self-defense forces fulfill that role. The increasingly frail emperor is seen as a liberal who opposes any return to the militaristic ways that characterized his nation a century ago. While the idea of bowing before the leader of another country might not seem like such a big deal to some, it really is a huge deal to others. When we consider that those who left Europe did so in order that they could have the freedom to bow to no one and that the American Revolution rang out with chants like "No King but King Jesus," it's particularly insulting that the leader of this great nation would bow to anyone. Thankfully, President Trump doesn't care to bow to a king or emperor or anyone else. We can depend on him to carry America's good name to other countries with all the strength and dignity that our history requires.